What's up, geeks? Happy holidays. I am, of course, sporting my festive spirit with these wonderful antlers. Don't be too jealous. But yes, I have a fresh stack for our poll this week. 11 books that I got picked out, starting with Dark Knights of Steel, number 2, by Tom Taylor. This is amazing. I'm really enjoying the aesthetic that Taylor has sort of crafted here with this medieval world, and things are getting kind of serious. Jor-El is dead, and the mysterious Green Man is at the center of it, and we get to see again this sort of dynamic between Bruce Wayne slash Batman in this world, and Superman and the royal family, and then now the sort of like outer rings of the various allies that are part of this growing conflict now. Obviously, it's book 2 of 12, so there's a lot of ramping up still to do narratively, and overall I'm just really excited about it. The art is amazing. The covers on this series are crazy. I got the variant that had the character sheet look for both Superman and Batman, so those are probably the only variants I'm going to pick up, but just the standard A covers are just beautiful. So love this. Going to keep it on my pull for sure. Next up, Inferno, number 3. So this is actually, I was chatting with a friend about this. This feels more like a spiritual successor to Hickman's Powers of X, House of X and Powers of X, than some of the other narratives that have happened since. So again, this is picking up sort of where those left off with Moira Taggart and the return of Destiny and Mystique sort of being folded into all of this. And things are getting messy in Krakoa. Things are getting messy among the ruling class of the mutants, and everything is going up in flames. Right? That's the whole deal. So, really enjoying this narrative. The tension, the stakes are super high, and I'm really enjoying it. Art's still great, and I love Hickman's writing. I love what Hickman's done with X-Men in general, and you might not, and that's okay. If you don't like Hickman's X-Men, you probably haven't read X-Men in a while. And this is nothing new, but if you like Hickman's X-Men, you should be pulling this. You should be reading this. So no surprise there. Giant size Black Cat. It's the end of the Infinity Score arc, and Jed MacKay has done a wonderful job on this series. He writes Felicia so well, and the twist at the end is sweet and just kind of falls into what you would expect from this sort of chaotic neutral hero, chaotic good hero in Felicia and in the Black Cat. So really great stuff. The variant cover for it as well, I don't have it at my disposal, but there's a really great variant cover of Felicia with the Infinity Gauntlet that I think many people will likely have slabbed and up on their wall because it's a great display piece. So keep an eye out for that one. If you can pick it up in a trade even, it's a good one to have. I have it in my collection because I just love the way that it looks. So Black Cat came to an end. I really enjoyed the whole run, and this Infinity Score arc has been great. Another arc that came to a close, Amazing Fantasy. This is number 5 here. Came to an end, and pretty solid, pretty good. I liked it. The revelations near the end with where they were and sort of what the crux of the conflict, like where the crux of the conflict came from, honestly was a little convoluted, but at the end of the day, I feel like the narrative sort of wrapped itself up in a pretty clean way. I would say I didn't quite stick the landing, but still I'd say a solid 7.5 overall at the end of the arc. Some really great action, awesome art. I enjoyed Amazing Fantasy. It was a fun romp for me. So, good stuff. Now, a new arc has started up, Devil's Reign. So this is actually a pretty big event going on right now, with the one and only Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin, sort of at the center. And so, as many of us who have been reading Daredevil and such know, Fisk has sort of come out of the shadows from a a kingpin crime overlord to being the mayor. And now he wants to use his power to curb superhero activity. And some really interesting things are happening in this book. It does feel a bit like a redux of Civil War, and others have said elements of like House of M and things like that. So there are a number of people who did not enjoy this because the echoes of those narratives are just too loud for them, and they just think it's too much of a repeat. For me, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good introduction to a new arc. I think there are some really exciting things happening with Fisk and Kingpin, and honestly, I think that they're putting him back at the center for a reason, because with everything happening with Hawkeye and the MCU and everything, I would not be surprised if D'Onofrio's Kingpin is making a return sooner rather than later. And what better way to capitalize on that hype than having a major event with Kingpin at the center happening at the same time? I mean, it just makes sense. And I think this is just, maybe this is my tinfoil hat moment, but I honestly think that Marvel has just gotten a lot smarter in collaborating with all the various mediums that they're working in right now. Of course, they would have a collaborative show happening at the same time they're releasing a comic series, at the same time they're releasing a large-scale movie that might have a cameo of the character. You know what I mean? Like, they're having all those things play into each other. Yes, that makes sense to me. Anyways, Devil's Reign, good stuff. I enjoyed it. On the indie side of things, what's the furthest place from here? Number 2. The Peter Pan and the Lost Boys vibe certainly continues. The, oh gosh, I'm forgetting the name of the book. Where the kids all eat each other on the island. I don't remember the name of it now. I really should. I'll put it on the text as soon as I remember, because I will as soon as I finish recording this. But anyways, definitely get that sort of vibe. The art style is kind of rough around the edges, but it definitely encapsulates the sort of rough and tumble survivalists, unpolished life that all of these kids are leading. We still don't really have a lot of answers, just more of the sort of odd, empty world that's left and the people that are in it. So I'm interested in learning more about this world. This book didn't really do much to expand on that, but just sort of reinforced the initial spirit, the initial idea of the book just being the sort of Lost Boys feel. And yeah, it continues. So I'm still interested. I'm still invested. I'm pulling this. Another indie from this last week, Made in Korea, came to an end with issue, I believe it was 6. Issue 6. Interesting conclusion. I don't know if I liked it, to be honest. I thought there were some really cool things that were being done with it in the early issues. Just the sort of conflict in terms of, what makes a robot a person, or what makes a person, and, just those sorts of, standard tropes when it comes to sci-fi and how it sort of mixes up these various relationships and emotions and technology, etc. So that was all really cool. And then, I don't know, it just sort of, I think I kind of get what they were getting at the end, but it just didn't land very well for me. It just didn't, it didn't do it for me. So, I would say overall the series was pretty good. I'm just kind of disappointed the ending wasn't as effective as I would have liked it to be. So, too bad. Speaking of Tom Taylor, Superman, Son of Kal-El annual. The guy is doing some incredible work right now. I mean, it's just cannot be denied the impact that he's had on Superman as a brand. And, there is the branch that loves everything that he's doing right now, and then, of course, there's the branch of folks who think that he's the worst thing to happen to Superman since Superman became like a lightning bolt and stuff after he died and everything back in the late 90s. Anyways, I think that this run has been amazing, and this issue is really great too because it sort of resurfaces the tension between Superman and Lex Luthor, of course, everyone's favorite villain that they love to hate, and so it sort of comes back to the surface. The level of engagement between Luthor and Superman are still very, superficial. I mean, between John, right, the new Superman, is still very superficial, entry level stuff. And honestly, some of Luthor's shenanigans in this issue are like really stereotypically like villainous. Like just sort of like maniacal, like like he should have a mustache that he's twirling at some points in this. So it doesn't have the same sort of refinement of Luthor that you might have been used to, but overall, like that element is still there. There's just some parts of it where I was just like, really, like that's kind of over the top. Regardless, I'm loving the Taylor Superman run in general, and the annual is no exception to that. Good stuff. I'm pulling it. Captain America, Iron Man. This is a fun little jaunt. Nothing super deep narratively, nothing really super deep in terms of like uncovering more about the characters. It opens up with Tony being a womanizer as usual, and it has Captain America being heroic and getting all the attention, and Tony's like, hey, like I'm over here trying to be trying to put on a song and dance for everyone. So it's the typical sort of banter between the two, but the stakes aren't super high. So again, it feels like a kind of a fun jaunt of an arc or of a series, but without the sort of tech on Avengers or Mech Strike feel, right? Like those ones are like junk food, like you eat those and you're just like, yeah, this is just going to be like entertainment, this is going to be fun. I feel like Captain America and Iron Man, while it's still good, I feel like it doesn't know where it lives on that scale. Like it's trying to be really serious, but I'm not really seeing the stakes in the series just yet. So we'll see. I'm going to keep an eye on it because I love both Captain America and Iron Man. So I want to read anything they're in. So yeah, I'm pulling it, but it's more like a pull question mark, maybe for you. Death of Doctor Strange tie-in for Blade. This one was pretty good. Pretty good contained story. Again, this isn't really contributing anything to the broader lore or narrative. The way that to date, I think the Avengers tie-in for Death of Doctor Strange has been the strongest one so far, and it remains that way. But this is probably one of the stronger ones, just because it's a great little side story about Blade, right? Putting Blade kind of front and center, showcasing him as the sheriff of the Vampire Nation, as the vampires that are left after he and Doctor Strange just did a number on the majority of the vampire race, essentially are taunting the end of the Sorcerer Supreme, and Blade sort of having to deal with that grief and mourning while also having to deal with just sassy vampires smart-mouthing him, and him trying his best not to proactively attack every vampire that he sees, because that's not what he's supposed to be doing anymore. So it's interesting. There's a lot of kind of humorous bits, and the action is good, and the writing is pretty decent as well. So I enjoyed it. I'd pull it if you're a fan of Blade. You'll probably want to hold on to it. If, again, you're just following Death of Doctor Strange as the story and you're curious if this is going to contribute anything to that broader narrative, it doesn't. So if you're looking for some more tidbits and stuff, it's not a influential or impactful tie-in in that way. But it's a great story about Blade. So, and then finally, Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, #1. And this goes back to my earlier point. Hawkeye is an amazing show. People love it, and they're watching it all the time. And so what better way to capitalize on that than to have a fresh series with Kate Bishop at the center? And here it is. It seems to be geared towards younger people. It's an approachable issue is what I'm trying to say. So there's definitely room for if families are kind of watching this show, and maybe you've got like a 11 to 14-year-old and they want to like pick this up. It's definitely approachable in that way, and it's It's good. It's really fun. It's got a pretty simple setup, sort of tease up the narrative. Lots of kind of fun banter and dynamic between some of the former Young Avengers and Merrick Chavez and all those other folks that are interacting with Kate. And yeah, it's good stuff. It's got a little bit of a kind of Spider-Man feel in the early pages, and Kate's sort of first foray with the villains in this arc anyway. So yeah, good stuff. I'm gonna keep an eye on it. I personally haven't really been super invested in Kate Bishop and Hawkeye stuff in the past, but I'm interested. It's got my attention. So in the background today, I've got the Critical Role Vox Machina Origins hardcover. Collects the first 2 series of the Critical Role comic book, which, if you are a fan of fantasy, then you want to be reading this comic. It's amazing. And if you haven't watched Critical Role at all or don't know what it is, it's a D&D show that streams on Twitch. It's I think when the report came out around the Twitch earnings, it was the highest earning Twitch channel that there is. And there is an animated series around their first campaign coming out to Amazon Video in February. So keep an eye out for that. But the collected volume is actually a pretty good price, and so you can get that, and it's a nice oversized hardcover volume that collects the first 2 series. And then the other background piece that I have here is House of X and Powers of X, which, as I mentioned, I'm a big fan of Hickman's X-Men. If you are not acquainted with Hickman's X-Men, that's where you start, right there. House of X and Powers of X sort of rebooted how we think about X-Men, and bring Xavier and Magneto together in an alliance that we haven't really seen before in the X-Men comics, and the result of that is Krakoa, the mutant nation of Krakoa, and sort of the way that they've been interacting within the Marvel Universe for the past number of years. So that's it for this week's poll. Sorry it took a couple more days than usual, but again, if you've been enjoying these, in case it's not painfully obvious, I don't write a script for this ever. I read the comics, and then I sit down in front of my Logitech camera and I just talk about them. So I apologize if it's not the most polished comic review that you find, but regardless, I hope that you enjoy them, my sort of off-the-cuff review for these things. And if you do, please like and subscribe, and I'm looking forward to doing more of them. And until next time, keep reading, geeks. See ya.